Good morning. Let me see, it's 9:09 a.m. on Wednesday, March 8th, 2023. This is the monthly meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board. I'm going to ask Ray Mateus to do roll call and then advise whether or not there are any public comments, please.
Good morning, Ray Mateus with the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. We received no public comments. So for roll call, Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Reyes.
Here.
Ms. Bird.
Here.
Ms. Stevens. And Ms. Enriquez is not present. So we have a quorum.
We have a quorum? Okay, thank you very much. The second item of business, agenda item 2, discussion and action on the election of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority officers for 2023. I'd like to put on the table a nomination for Jim Smith as vice chair and Sissy Bird as secretary treasurer. I'm going to combine that because the functions are kind of similar. If there's anyone else, if there are any other motions, I'll entertain those as well. Otherwise, I'll entertain a second to mine. You'll second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? At the next meeting, we'll update on committee assignments. So will you put that on the agenda? As treasurer, Ms. Bird will be the chair of the finance committee. But we have a new member coming in who should be here and onboarded for the April meeting. And so we'll look at the committees and make a decision about whether or not we want to keep the 3 that we have, or if there are other things we need to do at this point. I'll visit with Raymond. I'll have him reach out to each of you. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to share those with him. As of right now, we have a planning committee, a finance committee, and the executive committee. The executive committee are the officers. And we handle a lot of the administrative formalities. We only meet as needed. And planning committee is very active. It'll probably be a little more active as we continue to move forward with some big projects, particularly with the federal funding. And then finance committee, of course, is overseeing all of our budget, our quarterly expenses, our audit, and those kind of financial affairs. And up to now, they've done a really good job working with the staff, and particularly with Mr. Studer. So if you'll just put that as a business item for next week, next month, I'd appreciate it. Moving on to item 3, the adoption of minutes for the RMA board meeting of January 11th, 2023. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Are there any comments or amendments?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
I second it.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 4, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of a contract for indefinite deliverable professional engineering design services with A, ACOM Technical Services, Inc., and B, HDR Engineering, Inc.
Okay, Ray Mateus again. For this item, this is a follow-up. As you all know, we have done a procurement sometime back in 2022 trying to fill out our IDC program, the indefinite deliverables. This is the program where we select multiple engineering firms and we rotate them when the projects come online. So we've already entered into 2 agreements with 2 firms, Consor and Dannenbaum, and these are the other 2 firms that were brought on board through that procurement. So we have agreements that have been agreed to by these 2 firms, AECOM and HDR, and we are ready to execute, subject to your questions. And I'd recommend approval.
Are there any comments or questions? If not, I'll call for a motion. We have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Excuse me. Item 5, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of an amendment to the interlocal agreement with the town of Horizon City regarding the acquisition of right-of-way for the Darrington Roadway project.
Good morning, Robert Studer, Director of Finance for the RMA.
There is no dollar change here. We are simply modifying the language to confer with the process we're actually going to put in place for the transfer of funds from the town of Horizon to the RMA. We had started with a different process. You may recall this is our second project that we're doing right-of-way acquisition are. So as we figure this out and work with entities, we're refining our process. Now we're codifying that into here. There is no dollar change. It's just updating the agreement to align with what's actually going to happen as far as cash movement. I'll take any questions, but I do recommend approval.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 6, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following instruments as they relate to the Fabens Airport Monument Project. A, the interlocal agreement with El Paso County. B, the amendment to work authorization number 1.1 with Hewitt Zollers, Inc. And C, amendment to work authorization number 36.1 with Atkins North America, Inc.
So by way of background, as you know, we have we have an existing project with the County of El Paso where we are providing support services, including design and construction activities related to the improvement of the Fabens Airport. That improvement is related to their partnership with UTEP and some of the research facilities that they're developing and some of the improvements that they're trying to develop through that relationship. So what you see then before you today is an amendment to that interlocal to provide additional funds from the county to the RMA so that we can develop a new entrance sign for them, a monument sign. And you'll see as part of your backup an example of what that monument sign could look like. So as we do with each of these, when we are adding scope and fee, we'll first, under item 6A, amend the interlocal agreement with the county whereby they're providing us additional funds. Then under 6B, the design firm Hewitt Zollers will be provided with an amendment to their work authorization, asking them to complete those designs. And then we, of course, amend under item C, the work authorization with Atkins North America, who provides design oversight for those activities. So with all of that being said, the county, we have a representative from the county here, but they have reviewed and approved these amounts. So I would recommend approval.
Are there any questions, comments? Further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 7, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following instruments as they relate to potential projects from the Texas Department of Agricultural Community Development Block Grant Program. A, the interlocal agreement with the City of San Elizario, Texas, and B, the interlocal agreement with the town of Clint, Texas.
Ray Mateus again. So as read into the record, this deals with 2 specific interlocals. These relate to the Texas Department of Agriculture's CDBG grant program. And this actually, the fact that we're bringing these to you relate to our initial work with the Rio Grande Council of Governments and also the El Paso MPO, whereby we're trying to partner with the smaller communities, San Elizario, Clint, Horizon, and the other folks. Well, the COG actually identified this particular grant funding program. And so we're working with them so that the city will identify, the individual cities will identify potential projects. We will develop a budget for them. They will actually submit the applications. And if successful, then the RMA will step in and do the design and the construction activities for these 2 projects. So we're very excited about this, this venture with San Elizario and Clint, and we're hopeful that we'll be successful. So happy to answer any questions, but in the interim, I would recommend approval.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
I need to follow the bubble here. So we have the Council of Governments, okay, we have the MPO, and then we have the entities, the communities. Now, track me through that process when we, in other words, what the steps that we go through to make that happen.
Sure. So this whole exercise began when this RMA realized the smaller communities need help. They need the resources, right? So we started speaking, and in fact, actually prior to that, we had been speaking with the COG. The COG, Council of Governments, has existing relationships with all of these smaller communities. So they were a natural, right? They know the folks, they know the players, they know their needs. So we partnered with the COG Part of that too, though, is that we partnered with the Metropolitan Planning Organization because they are the planning organization for the region, so they know which entities are submitting on different grant applications. So we want to make sure that we're not competing against another community within our own area. So that's how that works. The COG is really opening the doors for us. The MPO is making sure we're not stepping on anybody else's toes. But when it comes to transportation, the RMA would handle the design and the construction activities. And we've actually also offered to provide grant writing support as well. But for these, the COG is actually doing the grant writing support for San Elizario, and Clint, I may have this backwards. No, that's correct. And Clint is using a third-party grant writing agency to handle the grant for them. So we're just providing the engineering work up front to provide the estimated budget to be rolled into the application. If successful, then we'll take over the design and construction.
And I could add to that, the Community Development Block Grant Program in this region, the city of El Paso gets its own direct allocation because of its size. The bulk of the rest of the regional block grant from the federal government goes to the COG. So the county and all the smaller jurisdictions, they have a CDBG block grant allocation that the COG manages for them and makes decisions about how to allocate. And they use it for infrastructure. They use it for a lot of other things, but primarily in the smaller areas, it's a source of funding for infrastructure. And so those projects are probably in the master plan for the MPO, but they could be smaller things that really, they're not part of the MPO, but they're funding that for which they're eligible to use for their infrastructure programs. So it's sort of like, it's kind of like a CDBG department for the region outside of the city of El Paso. And they have a fairly substantial allocation.
That's right.
Are there any, who are the signatories to the interlocal agreement between us and these communities?
The mayors and Joyce Wilson.
So it's
Our
just
chair.
directly between the
Okay,
community
all right.
to do the work for them.
Okay.
Now, and to kind of further take that out another step, this interlocal, all it does is establishes the relationship so that when they are submitting the application, they can check the box that says they have procured an engineering firm. So that's the important point about this. And so when and if they are successful, then we will either amend these interlocal agreements to add in the funding that they've been awarded so that we can begin design and move on to construction, or we might have to enter into a separate agreement depending on what Department of Agriculture requires of us.
And these interlocals can be amended to do other projects too, right? So this is sort of the boilerplate of the relationship to be their quote-unquote engineering and public works department.
Well, so we pitched that first, but because of the unique nature of them needing to identify this program and
Just
this
so
this
it's
one is
limited
unique.
just to this, but it could be expanded down the road.
That's right. So
Okay.
the form that we're running through, I think, is going to give us a step ahead for the next time we
Okay.
race into the project. And kind of to that point, this came about because we had been pitching to them through the IIJA. The COG would handle any projects that relate to broadband or water improvements through the IIJA, and any transportation projects would then fall to the RMA. So that's why they reached out to us when they identified that CDBG program. So I think it's it's a really good step towards that niche that we're trying to provide, that service that we're trying to provide to the smaller communities.
And is this the identical process we're going through with Anthony and Vinton and those in there?
We are with different funding sources, right?
Yes.
So with them, we've identified all of the projects that they've got, and we're trying to tie them to IIJA programs or others, right? So if we find a CDBG program where they're eligible, then we'll apply it there. It's really not specific to the grant fund.
Are there any other entities that could fill this role?
Would you put your mic on when you're talking, because they're recording, I think.
Thank you. Are there any other entities that have previously served in this role or that could?
In our role?
Uh-huh.
Not that I'm aware of. So that's that niche that I was referring to earlier. We're trying to provide that support to the smaller communities that have oftentimes, well, sometimes in the past, these funds have actually been returned to the state because the smaller communities have not applied. So now with the COG and the MPO, we're trying to make sure that we're not sending any money back.
Perfect. Thank you.
So in the case, in this immediate case, it's the mayor of Sinelli and the mayor of Clint. What happens if there's an area that doesn't have an elected mayor?
I think it's a good question. The eligibility would kick in, right? So if they don't have an elected
Probably be the
governing
county.
board, then they might not be eligible for that
Be a
program.
county judge, maybe.
Would step in?
Yeah, the county judge would function as the elected official, if
Actually,
you're in
that-
an unincorporated area.
Yeah, but I'm speaking a little bit out of school, right? Because I haven't gone down with this, reviewed this specific question. But there are eligibility requirements, and most of them say you have to be a local government, which normally means you have a governing board and you have a mayor. But honestly, I'm not.
But if you're in an unincorporated area, your local government's your county.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
So, for example, if you're in an area that's not governed like Horizon City, Clint, like a town, and you're outside of town, you're in the unincorporated area, so then the county it would be a county function.
I was thinking like Canopy.
And they could still get this funding, because the county's on the COG.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
on the
true.
COG
That's true.
specifically for these little areas that are unincorporated, rural areas that need things. So they could provide that function. Are there any other questions?
For these smaller communities, some of them are ETJs of larger communities, like San Lazario used to be under Socorro, I think, in the past, or is this
They were. My understanding is that they
They're
incorporated
incorporated.
to
to
avoid
get
being.
rid of that? Okay,
Correct.
Being annexed.
okay, got it.
So, if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve, but I do want to say I'm really excited to see that we're advancing some of these. Because if you're looking for like long-term purpose and sustainability for the RMA, these are the kind of things that will really like help us continue to move forward and provide a viable function in the region. So I'm excited that this is happening. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve. We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, item number 8, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the submission of a letter of commitment for the Thriving Communities Program.
Robert Studer for the record. This one actually dovetails perfectly with the last one. So you may recall that this board authorized the executive director to apply for a grant for this program at its November meeting. From that, we have applied and we're waiting to be notified. If we are notified that we've been selected, one of the requirements is that we submit a letter of support from this body within 10 days. We're partnering with the MPO and the COG. We've gone to each of those asking for a letter of support. We don't know when we'll get that letter of the notification or if we will, but we want to be prepared in case we do. It does say on the application that we would be notified in early 2023. So this is simply a letter of support saying that this board agrees and approves of continuing. And just as a refresher on the Thriving Communities, the federal government realizes as well that the smaller communities may not have the support they need, and so this would connect us to a capacity builder to bring in more support for these smaller communities. Happy to take any questions, but do recommend approval.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 9, discussion and action on a board resolution related to the annually required security awareness training certification, which authorizes A, the chair to execute a governing board acknowledgement form, and B, the executive director to submit documentation evidencing compliance.
So
Do
this,
we all have to do this?
no, this is
Oh.
just for Raymond and I, so
Good.
take a deep breath.
I was like,
But
another
we have to
training?
do security training each year as well, and then prove to the state that we've done that, and so we're asking for authority to submit that to the state, asking the chair to sign a form evidencing that it's been done, and then Raymond to provide some information to the state stating so. We do this once a year, and we do it through the city of El Paso, and it makes it pretty easy. So with that, I recommend approval.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve?
We have
I
a
second it.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item 10, discussion and action on a board resolution. Okay, item 10 And item 11A, I'm going to table to the end of the meeting so that we can go into executive session. So if we could move to item 11B, quarterly presentation, update, and discussion on the Borderland Expressway project. And item C, the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan.
Okay, Ray Mateus again. For Borderland Expressway, I don't have a lot to report. I did meet with TxDOT last month, I believe it was. Got an update from them. They're advancing the project. They're ready to move on with phase one. And they've received some encouraging support from Austin on phases 2 and 3. So that continues to move forward.
Good.
As far as the County Comprehensive Mobility Plan, we have provided the normal PowerPoint as part of the backup, so I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's really all I have for you for items B and C. And no action required.
Let me chime in on Borderland Expressway. We've been working with TxDOT and through the coalition for the Borderland Expressway, with the idea, and we've discussed here in the past about going for some of this federal funding for on the infrastructure bill. TxDOT has kind of put a pause on that action because they indicate they are getting very positive stuff out of the commission based on the visits that they had down here, that project is very high on their funding. On their funding. So we kind of hit the pause button, which I'm a little bit nervous about because as time goes by, we're going to miss some application windows. But we're going to follow through with that to see how it goes.
Well, I'm assuming if it's going to be funded, they'll probably, because there's quite a bit of money this year, I think, in the coffers because of the economy, that it will be in this legislative session. So we probably should have a sense pretty quickly if they're going to do an earmark for this in the legislative session with the TxDOT money, even if it's not for this year, but at least it's in the queue. I do think, though, you should continue to push to say we don't want to delay fund application opportunities if it's going to be uncertain. Okay.
I have a question. Will this require legislation?
No.
No?
It's a project that's been approved, and the project's had all the due diligence.
But for funding?
Yeah, phases 2 and 3. Well, I don't think it has to be approved by the legislature. It's just got to be approved by the TxDOT Commission. With the funding allocation they've got, it's just got to get into their priorities.
So why is this different than the capping of I-10 that apparently there's legislation pending? Is there?
The legislation pending relates to the RMA's ability to participate in that project, not to the funding of the project.
Yeah. So we could manage it because it's not technically, I think, considered infrastructure, like transportation infrastructure. It's more like a surface amenity. Is that the issue?
Yeah, we could do the majority of what they're envisioning for the Deck Plaza project right now under existing legislation, but there are some areas that are somewhat gray. So the proposed legislation would make it very clear that this type of project in this area could be completed by this particular RMA. So it would be just kind of.
Will we get briefed on it so that we can better understand it, or?
I can certainly do that. I'll follow up with you after this
So
meeting.
we
and
have
if you're-
been consulted, the RMA?
I believe it was part of our legislative priorities.
I think we put it in the last session, and it didn't pass, right?
Correct.
In the last session, we had a piece of legislation to clarify and expand our authority to be able to do the entire, capping of a highway, including the park-like amenities that aren't quote-unquote transportation related, but it didn't pass. And I think part of it didn't pass because other people started jumping on and wanting to put their name on it, because I think it was really El Paso specific, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think they were doing it for us, for this project, and then other entities wanted to get in, and so what happens is, when everybody starts jumping on board, then some of the jurisdictions, like the legislators, don't support it, so they nip it. So hopefully we won't go through that again. Otherwise, we'll try to do as much as we can, and then they'll just have to contract out the remaining pieces, which really don't make sense. So,
Okay,
So I'll reach out to you and, yeah,
Okay.
yes, sir.
do you think maybe we could do a legislative update with our folks at
Sure.
the next meeting?
Sure, we can do that.
Because they'll have been a couple months through, and they can give us a sense of what's going on and what's not, and that way we could really discuss this a little bit more if you want. Okay.
Certainly.
Yeah, we have like our lobbyist, don't we? Don't we have like our lawyer or?
Well, our attorneys monitor all of the bills.
Yeah,
that are-
maybe
that
they
are
could
passed.
just brief us.
Certainly, they can do that.
It's not on the agenda. Well, it's on this agenda. Are we going to be brief? No, this is a different attorneys we're briefing today, right?
Same attorneys, different project, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can they brief us on this? It's part of the,
It's not really part of.
well, it's not really, it's not. Okay.
No.
Just see if we can make them available at the next meeting to
Sure.
give us an update on what's going on at the legislature. I'll give them a chance to prepare anyway.
Yes, ma'am, we'll do that.
Okay. Any other questions about the mobility plan or the Borderland Expressway? All the mobility plan projects, are they going along well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Where's the next plan, the 2021 or 2022? Has that been done?
The RMS 2020 is in motion, so that's where we're doing the Village of Vinton's roadway through that.
Okay.
Darrington right-of-way acquisitions, that's part of that plan. The I-10 widening where we did the funding, that's part of that plan as well. And I know I'm missing one or two. Might be a couple others, but
But we don't have a new mobility plan with the county for a newer version yet, do we?
just the RMS 2020. That was the
Okay.
one that followed the 2013.
Okay.
Or the, yeah,
Okay.
2013.
All right. So if there's no other business, it's 9:36 a.m. And the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board of Directors will now retire into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of consultation with attorney. We'll reconvene in the open meeting upon conclusion of the executive session. Do I need a motion to do that?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I think that works. But just for the record, if you'll note that it's for item 10 and 11A.
To discuss item 10 and 11A, that's on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, but I don't need to ask for a motion to recess, do I?
don't
I kind of
believe
jumped
so.
and read it before, I thought to ask about that.
Actually, yeah, let's do that if you
So
don't mind.
can I get a motion then to
Second.
recess? Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Thank you, everybody. And this is the last item, so there, when we come back, if there's any action or not, it'll be only on this particular item. No other business. All right, it is now 10:32 a.m. on March 8th, 2023, and the Board of Directors of the RMA is reconvening its open session after deliberations in executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code Section 551.071. The board consulted with its attorney but took no action in executive session. We are now moving to item 10, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of an amendment to work authorization number 27.8 with Atkins North America, Inc. for the Pelicano Drive widening project.
Raymond Tejas again. This item is an amendment to the Atkins work authorization that will allow us to fund the addition of traffic control devices for the Pelicano project. And so, subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item.
Move to approve.
I second it.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Call for the vote? Aye.
Aye.
Any no? Motion passes. There being no further business, any further business?
No, ma'am, no action on 11A.
Okay, it's now 10:33 a.m., so I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.